We're live. It's Wednesday afternoon. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Men's Radio. Hello, I'm Neil Long. No Russ today. He's doing other stuff, but I do Wednesdays now, which is really, really cool. So we'll do some hellos. I've got a fantastic guest on. I did say when I took over the Wednesday shows, I want to do a lot more focusing on the maintaining of mental health and what we can do to take care of this really, really important aspect of our lives and all the various ways of doing it. And the more we share, the more ideas are out there. That's great. And of course, it is a non-judgmental space. I know that's the phrase Russ likes. I like the phrase safe space. Something is a bit Californian, but I don't mind that too much. I do. But safe space where we can share and discuss ideas and what's worked for everyone else, and indeed support each other in our mental health journeys, because perhaps it is a journey. Perhaps you'll learn things that you never knew before. Perhaps you'll be reminded of things long forgotten. That's nice when that happens. You think, oh yeah, I remember that. That was lovely. I'll take some more of that. I'll take that. Plus I go to quite a regular personal development call, at least once a week. So some of those insights might come out here as well, because I find those incredibly, incredibly valuable. And if you're curious, it's nothing weird, and I'd love to get the guy on the show at some point, because I think the guy's absolutely brilliant. But anyway, let's do some of your comments. Who have we got tuned in? RVB, Robert Van Buren. How are you? How are you getting on? Give us a quick update on your health. Are you doing all right? Barry J. Allen, good afternoon, Neil. Good afternoon, Barry J. Allen. How you doing? And Dave Sleet, greetings one and all. Had a fantastic conversation with Dave Sleet, actually, about an upcoming book of his. We're going to get him back on the show discussing this, because at a later date when the book's due to be released. It does look very, very fascinating. I know Dave is a big fan of all things personal development, and he's put an awful lot of work into this. And the book is called The Psychological Hive, which sounds absolutely fascinating. But anyway, more about that nearer the time. Yes, recovering now, thanks, Neil. That's what I like to hear, RVB. Congratulations, and I'm glad you're feeling better. That's brilliant. Now, today on the show, a fascinating guest. Going to be discussing something today. Here's the backstory. One of my little side hustles is I help people get their podcasts online. I find with most of my clients, they got a message, they want to get the message out there, but they don't want to do all the editing and all the finicky little technical bits. So I do it all for them. I'm kind of a producer in their pocket, but I do get to hear I do get to encounter some really fascinating points of view and fascinating people. And there's a brilliant podcast, which I'm going to recommend, called Men on Show by Andrew Payne. You can find it on the App Store. And it's really good. We hear about all the bad behaviors of men, but what about the greatness? We don't hear an awful lot about that. So it's really a showcase for the greatness in guys and what we're capable of being and the men we're capable of being. And according to today's guest, the kind of men that the world really, really needs. And this guy, what he teaches something, his whole work is progressive masculinity. We hear the phrase toxic masculinity an awful lot. Again, rather a negative bias, as there always is. But what about the other side of it? What about people that are working in these fields and making a real difference? So we're going to be talking to him very, very soon on the show. And as soon as I see him in the green room, we'll get him on, because I think it's going to be a really fascinating chat. Now, Boyer J. Farah, my book is in your bookstores in the UK. Did you read my book? What is your book, Boyer J. Farah? I think we've discussed it on the show before, but if you'd like to remind us, that'd be cool. Graham Pack, my last one for 2 weeks. I'm off to the land of Asa Don Brown and Elizabeth Green. We'll have a wonderful, wonderful time, Graham. I'm going to miss your sarcastic and funny comments on the timeline. I think we'll just have a moment of silence for the loss of Graham's comments for the next 2 weeks. Yeah. Have fun, Graham. Have fun. Last time I went to America, because I would take these. These are the rechargeable bits for my vape, and they come in a little box. But you put them under scanners, and they look like bullets, which did cause a bit of a hoo-ha when I was going through the scanner, because they're quite unfriendly at those port points and authority points. They don't have too much of a sense of humour. So I sort of smiled and said, no, I've got no bullets on me, everything's cool. And then got a lecture from a young man that it may not be the best idea to carry things that look like bullets in my luggage. Well, I didn't know they looked like bullets under the... they asked me how much money I was bringing into the country as well. And I told the truth. She said, well, any more, we do a proper search. I said, keep talking like that and I'll write you out a check, sweetheart. I didn't say that. Right. There we go. By Jay Farrer. American made me a black man. Yes, I do remember this. I simonandschuster.co.uk / it's way too long to read out, but you can see it on the screen. And as you can see, you can find Boyer J. Farrer on LinkedIn. Neil, that is my book. Open that link above. Thank you. Well, I can't open it now because I'm on air, but we know where to find you, as we say, on LinkedIn. So we will go and do exactly that. Any more comments? Any more hellos we'd like to do? We're waiting for our guest, a gentleman called Mike Nicholson. Really, really looking forward to having him on the show. I think this is going to be absolutely fascinating stuff. Progressive masculinity. What does that mean to you? I wonder. Progressive masculinity. I'm fairly sure it's not Andrew Tate. I don't really like to talk about him that much. But young person came up with a brilliant thing. Sometimes the wisdom of babes. And I thought this was absolutely brilliant. So you're very welcome, Boyer. Very good to have you on the show. Welcome. It was the absolute wisdom of babes. And when asked what this young person, I think he's only about 8 or 9, was asked what he thought about Andrew Tate, he said, chew the meat and spit out the bones, which is brilliant. Oh, little Buddha. Because I think all these people, particularly the controversial people, anyone has got elements that are useful that we can all learn from, whether it's what to do or what not to do. Even if people have done, I don't know, terrible things, you can see, well, okay, that's certainly not what I'd like to do, but they did that through a very good focus or something like that. Now, that isn't to justify terrible things done in the world, but what I'm saying is there's lessons we can take away from everything and everyone, either what to do or what not to do. Or we may completely disagree with some people's opinions on some things, but other bits, yeah, I can see something in that. Chew up the meat and spit out the bones. And I thought that was really good. Mary G. Williams, as a mother to young boys, interested to hear your guest. Yep, I'm interested too. And the minute he's in the green room, I will get him on. I'm just going to make sure, I'm 99.9% sure I did, but I was going to make sure that I've sent him the correct link, because that would be really, really silly if he's sitting in a completely different green room. And that's really not going to work at all, is it, to be honest? So frantically talking to you and scrolling as well at the same time. Bear with me. Any other comments, please? Please put them on the screen. Here we go. Just checking we've got the right link. Oh, wait a minute. I think I might somehow, I don't know how that's happened, but I think I've sent in the wrong link. Right, okay. So I'm just going to type now. This is the link. I apologize. There we go. Just came into my head that I might have the wrong link there. So while I talk to you, I'm going to drop him a text as well quickly, because he's been good enough to give up his time, and I certainly don't want him sitting in the wrong green room. So bear with me while I do this. There we go. Hi there. Please see email for correct. Why does autocorrect always fail? Correct link. There we go. I'm sure he'll be here very, very soon. Mary G. Williams. How young are your boys, Mary G. Williams? Just be really interested, because it can't be easy. Well, bringing up any child really in these days and times. And I wonder if boys are more challenging than girls. I only have a daughter, so I can't comment. The joys of producer presentation. Life is always fun. I'm very self-op here. I'm literally doing it all myself, putting all the banners on the screen, pressing all the buttons, doing all producing, all my presentation. There we go. I'm the cheapest in the price range. So what can I do? And here he comes. I'm going to get him straight on. So welcome to the show, Mike Nicholson. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome, sir. I eventually sent you through the correct link. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries.
Suddenly I had this thought. I'm just going to double check that. Welcome to the show. It's really, really good to have you on. As I was saying to our wonderful audience, the backstory is you were featured on Andrew Payne's podcast, Men on Show. And I listened to what you had to say, and I thought, this is just so men's radio. This is absolutely, our audience will absolutely lap this up. In fact, you're getting love already. As a lady who's commented, Mary G. Williams, as a mother to young boys, I'm interested to hear your guest. And I asked just before you came on how old the boys were, 15 and 11, and another older one at university. Progressive masculinity. I think your message is fantastic. I'm really interested in what you've got to say. Tell us all about it, Mike.
So I was a teacher for 20 years. I was an English teacher in secondary schools. And during that time, I did a lot of mentoring, particularly for boys and young men who were going different social and emotional issues. You know, a lot of it was informal, you know, before school, after they just stormed out of a math lesson, just sitting down and talking to them and, you know, making them feel safe, listening to what they're going through. And the more and more I did this, the more and more I realized that the common thread that was connecting a lot of these young men was this performance of masculinity. You know, they were sabotaging so much of this incredible potential that they had to look a certain way, you know, their mental health, their academics, their relationships. So I went to the head teacher at the time and just said, listen, if I put something together, will you let me run it? And he was great. He said, yeah, it sounds fantastic. And what it's basically all about is providing safe, non-judgmental spaces where groups of men can come together with younger men and talk about what do we think it means to be a man. And I'm really keen on not imposing models of masculinity on people. I think young men are surrounded by a world that, especially online, you know, it's like, we know what it means to be a man. Follow us, subscribe to us. We've got masculinity gurus, masculinity bros, hustlers like Andrew Tate saying, follow me. We kind of go down the path, well, let's ask them, what kind of man do you want to be? Let's think about the kind of man, the kind of friend, the kind of partner, the kind of father you want to be.
And
then try and
that's
remove
a key
those
difference.
barriers.
I mean, I'm picking up a key difference already because there's so many, like you say, of models of masculinity, people's ideas, sometimes with some good ideas where you can chew the meat and spit out the bones, and some a lot of bad ideas and some reasonably good ideas. But all of that is imposing something from the outside onto them, rather than what would seem to me to be the wiser option of, like you say, asking them who do they want to be. You know, allow them to be a self-defined person, and to do that, you're right. You do need the safe space. And something else you said, literally when you just came on, that they put an awful lot of effort into looking a particular way, thinking they should be this way, they should be that way. All about fancy dress, all about the mask, all about what it looks like to other people, but very little essence to that. And you went as far as to say they actually sabotage themselves by these societal demands, if you like, right?
The mask of masculinity is, you know, it's one of our exercises actually called the mask of masculinity. And on the outside of this paper mache mask, they write down what they want the world to see about themselves. And on the inside, they write the things that they wouldn't want because maybe they'd be judged as less masculine. And from year 7 right up until 18 years old, key stage 5, the masks tend to be the same. Want to look strong, confident, alpha, you know, nothing bothers me, all that kind of stuff. And the inside of the masks are always the same. You know, I've no confidence, ADHD, I'm dumb. Parents argue a lot at home. I don't know what I'm going to do in the future. And when we talk about these masks, I always say to the boys, like, whatever you've written on the inside of your mask, nothing makes you less of a man. None of that makes you less of a man. And you shouldn't be the only person in the whole world that knows about this stuff. Like, where can we find the people to talk to about this stuff, and why would that be beneficial for you?
So obviously a great success when you ran it for the first time at school.
Yeah. So I ran it for 3 years.
Did it catch on quick?
Were
you like flooded with people wanting to come?
Yeah, it kind of went from this thing where, you know, there's this assumption where it's going to be this woke liberal snowflake, you know, let's all hold hands and dance around kind of thing. But actually, progressive masculinity is all about producing strong men, because I think that's what the world needs. But maybe we need to redefine what we think it means to be strong sometimes. I know when I was younger, I kind of thought that petulance was strong. You know, I was a little rascal. I never took any accountability for my actions when I was younger. I'd just dig my feet and say, no, I didn't do it. He did it. Stop blaming me. When actually it was me. And I realise now that that was bratish petulance, but I thought that was strength at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought fitting in with the lads, you know, and doing some of the things that, even though those things went against my values, I would do them. I thought that was so. It's just being really open and honest and vulnerable and not coming across as perfect, I think is really important. I think the last thing that young lads need is someone like me standing in front of them pontificating from a place of perfection. I think
Yeah.
that I go first approach where, I have done some sexist stuff, even though I don't think I'm a sexist, to fit in with the boys when I was younger. I have done and said some really, I'm embarrassed and I'm ashamed, but I'm going to take ownership of it. And that empowers them to kind of talk back to me then.
So what do you think the young people think they should be today? The mask, the ego mask, the things that they're doing that are sabotaging themselves, particularly in the age of social media. Maybe we throw in that component as well. What's their biggest
Yes, I mean,
challenges today? What they think they should
social
be?
media is magnified a lot. Social media is magnified so much of the insecurities that were already there. And I say to them, like, you guys have all the stuff that I had to deal with when I was younger, but you've got the extra stuff of social media, of lockdown. And so much of social media is image, isn't it? It's presentation, it's the veneer. It's just, it doesn't matter what's behind it. What are you presenting to the world and what do we hide? So I think the challenges that they're facing are quite extreme. And one of our workshops is actually titled Masculinity in the Digital World. And we look at what kind of men are promoted in the digital world, how we act, whether the anonymity, makes us act, behave a little bit differently, and why that should be. And that's actually one of our most popular workshops, the digital one.
It's really interesting. My rule of thumb, which has always served me well online, and touch wood, I've never got in trouble online, is if I wouldn't say it to your face, I won't say it online.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
It's not a place to hide. Quite the opposite. But a lot of the time, it's used as what you might call anti-social media. And I think, in our day, without risking, because obviously you're younger than me, but I think, but I remember in my day, I didn't have one of these, and you could leave the bullies at the gate. And now it's right up in your face, 24/7, and that can't be easy. I can see why this is one of your most popular workshops.
Yeah, and in the workshops, I always say to them, like, how many of you do you think you would be happier if you didn't have a mobile phone or social media? And nearly every single one of them always put the hand up. And I say, how many of you think you could actually do that though? How many think you could detach from it and leave it? And none of them put the hand up. And when we discuss it, it's all about this fear of missing out, fear of not being connected, culturally missing out on things. So, I mean, we are falling into levels of addiction here, aren't we? We know something is bad for us, but we can't. So the kind of angle we come at from is, let's not demonize social media. Let's not demonize influencer culture. Like you said earlier, let's detach the things that are positive from the things that are negative and try and focus over here.
Absolutely. Now, how long have you been running this now? And you go all over the country, don't you?
Yeah, we've got regional facilitators now. So that I do less travel. I do the Northwest, but we've got a guy who just does London, a guy who does East Anglia, a guy who does the South. They're all ex-teachers or counsellors or youth workers, men who've got a proven track record of working with boys and young men, and who are really caring, who want to be there. So yeah, we're all over the country now.
And that's how long has it taken to grow to that kind of size?
It's taken 5 years now to get to this point.
That's great, though. I mean, that's great. Well done. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. Like I say, when I was editing your podcast, Andrew Payne's Men on Show, I thought this is absolutely fantastic. This is what it should be. This is what we should be teaching. I've been to various seminars over the years, and I always come out thinking, why aren't we teaching everyone this? And this one goes in that category as well, definitely.
Yeah, it's a real shame that, I mean, I felt I had to leave the education system in order to have the impact that I felt we needed to have.
Now,
Because,
I remember you saying
like
that
a lot of teachers.
So the existing model of education we've got did not allow for this. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I mean, the growth in the trust system and multi-academy trust has removed a lot of teacher autonomy. Teachers now, a lot of them are handed, right, teach this way, don't stray from it. And 2 of the 3 schools that I worked at were Catholic schools. And now I love the Catholic ethos, I really do. But, around topics like mental health, suicide, pornography, there was a real kind of taboo and a weirdness when actually we need to be engaging young men on those kind of conversations and topics. So it was a shame that, because I love teaching, but it was a shame that I felt I had to go outside the system in order to be able to have the impact that I need to have.
And it's a shame that because of, I suppose in this case, religious restrictions, you can't really get to the core of the issue, because something like take pornography. it's a it's just there, and we never had that. We never had that growing up. It was, if you were lucky, Naughty magazine and a brown paper bag. But,
if you were really lucky, you found your dad's stash, didn't you? And that was like the jackpot. That was like you won the lottery then. But yeah, we've got
so somebody told me.
Kids.
Yeah, so I was told. But
it's so funny because the pornography, when I first, so we talk about pornography with the older lads, the key stage 4 lads. The younger lads, you've got to be very careful because you don't want to signpost the way for those that are not watching it. And you've got to be very careful with the younger ones. With the older ones, though, when I first designed that section of that workshop, I thought, spend about 10, 15 minutes on this. But because they've never been able to openly discuss it without being shamed or humiliated, and it being presented as actually something very natural, but there are some risks attached to it that we need to talk about. It took at least half an hour to get through that section because they didn't want to stop talking about it.
Well, no, it's interesting. I think people really respect when it's open, straight talk about things, not preachy, just open and straight talk. And the minute you make it taboo, as I think some religions will want to do, in my opinion, then it kind of pushes it even further into the dark, and then nobody gets anywhere. I think the danger, in my opinion, of online pornography is, or number one, it can become addictive. It's the dopamine reward system, isn't it? So you need more to get like with any drug, you need more to they say in the drug world, so I'm told, you never replicate the first high. So you'll always need more and more extreme, and that can be quite dangerous. But just the whole message of how men interact with women. If you believe pornography, it's just, put bluntly, hot and horny women that are up for everything at the drop of a hat. And in my real life, I have not necessarily always found that to be true. And it's not a great message to be giving, unless I'm going to the wrong bars. I don't know, but you know what I mean. And I think it can lead to problems further down the line. So it's great to be able to talk about it openly.
Yeah, well, what we've got is a generation of young men who, because they're not having open and honest conversations about body image, about consent, about healthy relationships, they're self-educating through pornography. Now, the nature of pornography has changed dramatically since the top shelf magazines of the past. There's 80% of straight pornography features some kind of aggression against a woman, grabbing, slapping, choking. So you've got young lads watching that and thinking that's what it looks like, that's normal.
Thinking that's normal.
Exactly. When they have an encounter.
And that's terrifying. When you think about it, that is absolutely terrifying. What was I going to say to you? Just back to the facilitators you've got around the country. Are they all people that got to, I'm just guessing here, a certain point in their career, and then maybe like yourself, that came up against this glass window and thought, there must be a better way. There must be a better way. I know I've got more to offer the world, and there must be a better way to do it, but the current system's not allowing me. Is that fairly accurate how it unfolded? Or?
Yeah, for the teachers it is. So for the teachers, basically, we all follow a very similar pattern for the teachers. We hit, like you said, that class war. We said we want to be having these conversations, but our hands are tied by government policies or by school beliefs or whatever it is. So we've got to go outside the system. But we've also got guys who are counsellors and youth workers who work with us part-time, but then they've got other things going on. So the guy who does all the schools in London, and he's incredible. He's a professional actor. He's a counsellor that talks to young boys about mental health in schools already. He's 27 years old. He speaks 3 languages. He plays jazz flute. When they say comparison is the death of happiness. Whenever
I hate him already. I can't stand him already.
Yeah, but then what an amazing man to go in front of young, because he's obviously plugged into the London kind of cultural scene.
Well, yes.
Someone like me, a 42-year-old northerner coming down, I probably wouldn't have this. It's really important to me that our facilitators are regional based, so they're connected to the culture of the area. So him being London born and bred, growing up on the same streets, going speaking to these lads, very, very relatable. And that's kind of key. Like, don't come across as perfect, be real, be relatable, make them feel safe, and the rest kind of comes naturally.
Yeah, I find it all very exciting. What other taboo? We talked about pornography. What other things? Mental health, is that a taboo thing to talk about?
Yeah, mental health is absolutely huge. It's funny though, I do think we've come a long way with the message that men should talk. I think actually that message, it's filtered down to a lot more of the young men than you think. That's not actually what we found, is that's not the main barrier now. the main barrier is that they don't know how to have that conversation because they've never seen it modeled by a man, particularly a man they admire. You know, as opposed to say conflict or aggression, they've got lots of models for that, a lot of linguistic templates to fall back on. But so many lads have said to me, you know, I was going to go and knock on a door to speak about what I was going through, but then I was struck by this paralyzing thought. What do I say? What does that conversation look like? What words do I use? So that's really kind of what we practice. Once we overcome the first barrier of, you know, let's redefine help seeking as a strength rather than a weakness. We then run these kind of role play scenarios where, you know, we just act. We say, right, you're in this position. Who could you go to? What could you say? Even if you don't understand, I mean, a lot of young men think because they don't understand what they're going through, they're unable to talk about it. And I say to them, you know, you're not therapists. I'm not. We're not psychotherapists or anything like that. We're not going to understand complex psychological issues. All we need to say is, mate, have you got 5 minutes? Things are not so good. Or knock on that head, sir, have you got 5 minutes? Just need to talk to you. And then kind of empower them with the words so they can have those conversations.
Give them I mean, the fact that they, you're right, Mike. We have come a long way, and it's reassuring. But the fact that these people don't have the vocabulary for it shows just how much work there needs to be done. What I have noticed in the younger generation, let's say the 20-somethings that I know, my friends' kids, if you like, not that they're kids, but you know what I mean, is they talk about mental health as if it's something they have more authorship and involvement in. When I was growing up, the belief was, or I certainly had the belief, it was more the luck of the draw. You know, you got cancer, bad luck. You lost the genetic lottery. You know, now we know there's a lot of environmental things that play into it, for example, and there's a lot we can do to prevent it. Same with mental health. It's as if they've got more authorship, and I find that quite exciting, quite empowering, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a dialogue that, I mean, when we talk about masculinity, in a lot of ways we have come. So I don't remember these conversations being had when I was younger. None of my friends, teachers, dads, uncles ever spoke about our mental health. You know, in many ways, my dad was a very loving man, but he was also a man of his generation. It would have killed him to talk openly about stuff like that.
No, same with my dad. A very gentle man, a very hardworking man, a very honest man. But my God, when I had my ear pierced, he didn't like it. You know.
Yeah, so one of the most exciting parts of the workshop is where towards the end, when we look at what kind of father do you want to be in the future, and you know, if your son or daughter is going through a rough patch, are you going to model that emotional vulnerability, that emotional intelligence to have it? And no matter where I am, no matter, you know, when it's an inner city school, a private school, whether it's a faith school, that's always my favorite part, because when they imagine themselves as fathers, it shows the best side of them. You know, they say things like, I want my kids to always know that I'm there for them, that I'll have their back, that I'll support, I want to share my interests with them. A couple of days ago, year 10 lad said, I want us all to have matching Christmas pajamas.
You know, I'm exactly the same.
I couldn't handle the cuteness of that.
I'm really glad you've said that, because I love your work, and all of those things I try to be to my daughter, apart from the matching pajamas. We do part company on that, but yeah, and that's a lovely philosophy, and it's also quite empowering because they can be the person they want to be now. It's almost like looking ahead to your future self and bringing it into the present. It's one of those sort of clever timeliney, if you like, kind of exercises. But that's great. Back to sex education, because you touched on that. When I look back, our sex ed at school, it was hilarious. Really, we were given this book with loads of different chapters in it. One of these big kind of books like that, big thin book, right? And one double page was the sex ed bit. Okay. And they gave out the books, and I swear to God, all the books fell open at the same page 31 times. It was one of those things that was absolutely priceless. We were all absolutely obsessed and wanting to learn it, and the teacher thought it was pretty funny too. But literally all it was a picture of the biological bits and what they did. There was nothing on relationship, on pleasure, on communication, on boundaries, on consent. Nothing.
So where do you learn about that kind of stuff then?
For me, luckily, it would, you know, particularly consent, it was common sense, but common sense ain't so common. And I didn't, you know, and I didn't have access to violent, you know, pornography on a phone at the time, you know, because that ain't consent, far from it. So
I remember my sex education being very similar. I mean, we had the one lesson where you put the condom on the banana. The next
we never had that.
The next lesson was this horrible lesson where you had to watch a video about STDs. And then the final lesson after that was all about babies and how you don't want to have babies too young. So it was all fear based. It was all, like, stay away from it. It's rotten. It's evil. Like you said, it's all condemnation, shame, and judgment. And I don't think it has to be that way.
No, I think sex positivity is a really important thing, but absolutely teach, pleasure, relationship, consent, all of these sorts of things. I mean, people are thirsty for this knowledge, in my opinion. So, tell us about all the different workshops that you run. You've mentioned some of your favourite ones on the multiple.
Yeah, so we have 8 different workshops.
Take us through your curriculum.
Yeah, so we have 8 different workshops, and the school pick the 6 that they choose, that they think are best for their context and the needs of their pupils. And they range from things like emotional literacy and communication, masculinity in the digital world, attitudes towards women, healthy relationships and consent, role models and aspirations. Every single workshop kind of explores a different aspect of masculinity, and the school is free to tailor the program to what they think their pupils need.
What do you think are apart from the obvious ones like social media that we touched on, what do you think are the biggest blocks to this new healthy attitude towards masculinity, which is so needed? What objections are you coming up against?
I think what really frustrates me is that the so little positive representation of masculinity. It's like, and toxic masculinity does exist, don't get me wrong, but it's almost like masculinity itself is being defined as toxic, and that's making a lot of young men feel marginalized, unseen, unheard, frustrated. And everybody knows that when you've got a young man like that, he is very easy to radicalize into extreme ideas. Someone like Andrew Tate, that is very fertile ground for someone like him. So I think it's important that we get in there and we present, no, listen, this is what masculinity. First off, masculinity, there are 4 million guys in the world. There can be 4 million different ways of being a good man. Let's look at some of these other. So I fill the program with these really incredible men who are having such a fantastic impact on the world. And these are men that the social media algorithms are not presenting to our boys. These, like, for example, I don't know if you're familiar with Kevin Sinfield and Rob Burrows, the rugby players. Have you come across that?
I'm terribly ignorant on sports, so I'll have to take your word for that.
Yeah, the 2 rugby players basically, Rob Burrow came down with motor neuron disease, and his teammate Kevin Sinfield basically stuck by him through the whole thing, and he runs marathons and ultra marathons to raise money for Rob, who is like his best mate and his brother. And there's this little clip where he pushes Rob in the Leeds Marathon for 26 miles. 10 yards before the finish line, he picks Rob up, carries him over the finish line, gives him a little kiss, like, we made it, mate. And just showing like how amazing masculinity can be, how loyal, we can be, how compassionate. You can be compassionate and strong. You can be successful.
Yeah, I agree that the best men I know are they're not violent, they're not combative, they're not confrontative. They're in touch with both sides of their nature. But I think that's such an important nuance to say that masculinity, yes, toxic masculinity, I believe, does exist, or certainly men that display toxic behaviors, however you want to define it. But to define masculinity as toxic in and of itself, that's a big mistake.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's doing a huge disservice to the amazing men that are out there. I think the sensational nature of the media, they're always going to pick up on the worst aspects, aren't they? Because that'll sell more newspapers. And it's the same with the algorithms. It doesn't care about, truth or lies or anything like that. It just cares about hits and subscriptions. So one of the most popular pieces of feedback we get from the young lads after they've been through the program is that they really enjoyed the stories about the men that we presented to them. They didn't know men like that existed. They didn't know you could be like that and still be seen as a strong man.
I think also, I'd be interested in your opinion on this. Sometimes the heroes of the past seem to have to suffer an awful lot to get the greatness. Is that necessarily true? Or they devote a life of service to their people and then get killed at the end of it or something. So people think, well, what's the point in being a good guy? Look what happened to them.
Yeah, I think the reward shouldn't come at the end. The reward is doing the right thing for the right reasons, isn't it? And being strong enough to think, this is the kind of man I want to be. And I'm going to be this kind of man, whether I'm with my friends, whether I'm in the pub, whether I'm at work, and not changing who you are. So that's something that I did when I was younger. I was a very polite and respectful young man in some situations, but then I'd sacrifice those values to fit in others. And I'm a little bit embarrassed about that and some of the things that I said and did. But now that I'm older, I look back and think no one ever spoke to me about this
I
stuff.
think we've all done it. We all crave acceptance. I mean, I remember not actually being a smoker, but buying cigarettes that I could give out to people so I could be more popular. And when I look back at that was only last week. No, not really. But when I look back at that, just how crazy is that? You know, and cigarettes, you know, not as if it's even good for you.
The approach that we take is what's called a values-driven approach. So towards the end of the program, we give the lads this big kind of handout, and it's got loads of different values and characteristics. And we ask them to pick the 3 that were most important to them as a man. And the 3 most popular choices are kind of across thousands of examples are: the third one is resilience, the second one, selflessness, and the first one is loyalty. They're the 3 most popular choices.
Loyalty.
So if you were going to build resilience, selflessness, and loyalty, and I was like, if you were going to build a model of masculinity, that is a great foundation upon which to build your version of what you think it means to be a good man.
Define resilience, would you? Because I know the word is banded around an awful lot, and I did hear someone say resilience. What does that mean? Chuck a load more shit at me, you know? And I thought, no, that can't be resilience. So, what in your line of work, how would you define resilience?
Traditionally, resilience is looked upon about that kind of bounce back ability, doesn't it? That life will throw some curveballs at you. You are going to lose people that you love. You are going to have difficult days. You are going to, have a tough day at work, and having that resilience to get through it, that inner strength. But there's been a body of work recently that says that we're getting resilience all wrong, that resilience is being used to actually blame and shame people. Like, not only did you fail, but you didn't get back up after you failed. How dare you? You're weak. And the more modern way of thinking about resilience is that resilience is actually the strength that we draw from each other, rather than it being purely an internal thing. Like, you don't have to go it alone.
I like that. I really like that, because one of the most empowering feelings I've been doing I'm always very open about this on the show. I had a bit of a mental health dip about 4 years ago, and I've been doing quite a lot of healing work since then. And one of the things that really helped me was the safe space where I could take off the mask and knew that people have my back, and knew I wouldn't be judged for feeling very human feelings, where before I would have shoved them all down thinking I'm supposed I should have all the answers, and I've got to get it perfect, and I've got to get it right now, which was never going to work. That's just a hide into nothing. What a great way, though, of looking at resilience, so you don't feel you have to. Because I suppose we're all trained a bit into this kind of individualism, aren't we? And I'm not saying we shouldn't have an individual identity, not at all. But to feel that life is 100% a do-it-yourself project, and there's no support at all anywhere, and if you don't get back up quick enough, that's sort of weaponized against you as well. That's crazy. So
you're not resilient because you didn't get back up yourself.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I love that. That's something that we push in the sessions, that resilience is the strength that we draw from each other. And what's amazing in the workshops is how quickly the lads get on board with that. So just before Christmas, I was doing a set of workshops in Chester, and in the 4th workshop, so the lads have bought into the program, they've relaxed, they feel safe. This young man was saying how he's got a homosexual brother, and whilst he loves his brother, he's also a bit ashamed of him as well. And he feels like he's going to be seen as weak if he doesn't act up. He doesn't want to be kind of lumped in with his brother. And he said that he thinks a lot of his behavioural issues at school stem from that, from trying to look extra masculine or macho in his mind, to distance himself from his brother. And what was amazing was that, first off, that he had the ability to talk like that. But secondly, that every other lad in the workshop, 11 of the lads, held this space for him. They were quiet, they were respectful. A few of them were nodding along, and they just made him feel really held and seen and valued. And afterwards, the head of year came over to me and he said, "I can't believe what I've just heard there." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "I've been this lad's head of year for 3 years, and I've never heard him talk like that." And that's what I love about these workshops, is that this thing about boys don't like to talk, it's not true. If you make us feel safe, we actually enjoy it.
I agree. I sometimes love, profound, deep conversations. I think it's a fantastic thing, but we need the safe space to do it. And we think for decades, millennia even, that we've been saying that men should be this, men should be this, fighting against almost the natural order of things, when really the solution is just looking a little bit in a different direction and tweaking it just a little bit. And it can happen, like you say, really fast as well. It doesn't have to be like months of difficult, because I think that's another belief as well. Change is long and painful, and that doesn't have to be true either, does it? Not at all.
No. Not necessarily. No, I think we only spend 6 hours with them, and then we then provide the school with a package of resources to use these 12 lads to cascade the impact, to try and drive change from within the pupil body itself. So some of them might go on to become peer mentors for younger pupils. Some of them might go on to run one of the football teams, one of the younger year groups, and be the manager of the football team. And just all these different ways where these lads can then take what they've learned with us and spread the impact through the school, because
And I was
the
going to
younger
ask, is
pupils
there any follow up? So someone does a workshop with you. Can
yeah.
they come back from a top up? Is there sort of a aftercare, if you like, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's the aftercare program. So we've got like 5 or 6 different routes that we've resourced for schools. We've created all the resources for them, and we send these to the teachers and say, right, this workshop program is the starting point. Now build on the momentum that we've created, choose the different paths, which one would apply best to which young man, and get him to work, you know what I mean? Get him spreading the impact, because younger lads especially, they're not looking at people like me as role models. They're looking at the year 10, 11s. They want to copy those.
Have you seen the documentary? It's on BBC iPlayer, and it's the presenter Roman Kemp, Martin Kemp's son. He is the current presenter on Capital UK, and he did a documentary about his mental health. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that one.
I would make that recommended viewing for everyone. It's absolutely fantastic. I think he's done a follow-up as well. It's absolutely fantastic, and it wasn't even aimed at my age group. And
Just making a note of it.
Oh yeah.
When people recommend things, I like to make a little note of them.
All right, I'll tell you what. I'll look it up so I can give you the proper title. I'll do a cheeky Google. Hold on a sec. If I type in Roman Kemp mental health. By the way, if there's any questions for Mike, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I will ask away. Yeah, there's 2. So if you type in Roman Kemp mental health documentary. Yeah, I haven't seen the second one, but the first one and it was not even aimed at my age group. I just thought, wow, absolutely brilliant. One of our guests, I guess last week actually, was yet another guest on Andrew Payne's podcast, pinching all his good guests, but I'm sure he won't mind. Was a wonderful chap called David Breakspear, who'd had an experience of the prison system, and now what he's turned his life well and truly around. But one thing that jumped out at me there was, had he been asked the right questions early on, and I mean really early on, when he was around 9 or 10, then he wouldn't have had to go through all he's had to go through. And he used a phrase which I thought was really bleak, which was the school prison pipeline. And I remember thinking, good God, is that the best we can do? We can send people to the moon, for God's sake. We can look around the universe, and yet we have a school prison pipeline. What is that all about? Early intervention. Talk to us about that. And you do that, I take it. Do you get called to help the more troubled members of our society, shall we say?
Yeah, I think when obviously a school only gets to choose 12 pupils to go through this program, so they will naturally default to 12 most in need. And within them, you're going to get young men who have what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So they may have abuse, in their background. Quite a few of them are going to come from very low income households where they've struggled to, maybe they haven't had positive male role models. But then also, sometimes you get brought into a private school, where they've had cash rich but time poor parents. There's an iPad son, but I can't spend the weekend with you, which breeds a kind of a whole different set of really all the different institutions we visit. They come with a kind of unique set of issues, and learning how to adapt to those different issues is a key part of being an effective facilitator. But what you said about the pipeline there, I agree, that's a horrendous phrase, but unfortunately, it is one that I've heard quite a few times, particularly working in education.
Sobering, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it really is. So it's horrible and it's awful. And in terms of early intervention, and I love that phrase, be who you needed when you were younger. And I was thinking, who did I need when I was younger? I needed a man, a relatable man, to come and talk to me, make me feel seen, make me feel heard, make me feel safe enough to talk about things that are considered taboo without shutting me down, without judging me. That's who I needed when I was younger. And that's kind of what we're trying to be for the young men that we visit. And some of them are as young as 10 years old. When we go into primary schools, that's the lowest we work with, 10. And we adapt our content based on the age group and what's appropriate for them. But even at 10 years old, you can have discussions about consent. I think foundational understanding of not sexual consent, obviously, but the foundational understanding of something like consent should start way, way younger
Yeah,
than what we're
consent
actually talking
boundaries.
about.
Consent comes in many forms. I think there's a whole body of work out there. It's by Betty someone. It's called The Wheel of Consent, and it's about consent in all aspects of life. Because before that, I just associated consent with sex, but I never really thought about it, I suppose, more deeply than that. But consent absolutely comes consent.
Yeah, so when working with the young ones, for example, we do this little exercise. It's really effective. We pair them up, an A and a B, and we say, right, stand on different sides of the room. I say, A's, you're going to stay still. B's, every time I clap my hands, you're going to take a step forward towards your partner. A's, when you feel like they're getting too close, put your hand up and they have to stop. They can't, even if I clap my hands, they can't stop. And then usually they're about 2 or 3 feet apart and everyone's put their hand up. And then I say, okay, well done. B's, we usually take one big step forward. Don't worry, I know they put their hand up, but don't worry about that. Just take a big step forward anyway. And it creates this extreme level of discomfort in the room. And when we sit down afterwards, I say to the A's, how did you feel when you put your hand up and that person stopped? And they always say things like, I felt safe, I felt in control, I felt like that's how it should be. Okay, how did you feel when they crossed that barrier or that boundary? Felt weird, felt uncomfortable, I felt disrespected, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
These, how did you feel? How did you feel when I told you to step over? Oh, I didn't want to do it. I didn't feel like I should do it. And then we link that to consent. It's like you said, how do we establish boundaries that make us feel safe? How do we communicate those boundaries? How do we recognize and respect other people's boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think without any particular malice, we can tread on people's boundaries without meaning to, only because we don't know what boundaries are. We don't know what their boundaries are. But if someone's got a boundary and they communicate it to me, I'm very happy to honor that, of course.
Yeah. So we then go and do these little role plays again. So one of them, for example, is your friend is pretending to take a selfie, but he's actually taking a picture of that person over there, and they don't like having their picture taken. Everybody knows that. Why is that an image? Why is that an issue of consent? What could we do in that situation? And it's just, I think when you establish a foundational understanding of consent, when they're older and it becomes sexual consent, it's just an extension of that. It's actually very easy.
Yeah, start them young, early intervention, or just early teaching about these things. And there's nothing. I don't know why some people would consider these things taboo. I really don't understand that. That, to me, it was my personal opinion, that's very old-fashioned, outdated thinking. I really think that.
Yeah.
It really
when
is.
we do our parent sessions, so we do staff training, we do pupil workshops, we also do parent kind of support sessions. I always say, like, I understand why there's a reluctance to talk about these things, because we didn't grow up having healthy conversations about pornography or consent. A lot of us are quite intimidated to go in and talk about these things because we don't know what it looks like. We don't have the vocabulary. So the parent sessions are all about, how can I make my son or daughter feel safe? How do I approach this in a way that doesn't intimidate them or embarrass myself?
Yeah. Did my parents ever talk to me about that? No, I don't think they did. Thinking about it.
Well, and if you were lucky, you got the talk, didn't you? Where you'd hear whispers in the kitchen. Go on, speak to him. It's your son. This should come from you. And then your dad would come in and say, "Right, sit down, son. Sit down."
No, I think I was in the car with my mum when I was very young, and she said, "Do you know how babies are made? It needs a man and a woman." And I was like, "Oh, I knew that." And I think that was kind of the end of it. Really. So, yeah.
My dad tried having the talk with me, and it was tokenistic. It was high stakes. It was intimidating. Nobody wanted to be there. I learned nothing from it. He felt like he ticked a box as a dad and done his job.
Yeah. Tick that box. Tick that box. Move on. Have you seen that hilarious sketch? It's John Cleese at his best, and he's doing a sex education class, and he's actually brought a bed into the classroom. Have you seen that one? It's typical sort of Monty Python-esque humor, and it's fantastic. Stop sniggering at the back, Simmons, and all that sort of thing. It's very, very, very funny. It just sprung into my head there for some reason. But no, I love your message and I love your work. Congratulations. It really is very good stuff. Any questions for Mike? By the way, anyone tuned in, they're normally quite chatty, our people on the timeline. So we've obviously drawn them right into the conversation if they've got nothing to say. But Mary G. Williams as well says she was very interested to hear what you have to say. Any questions from you, Mary? She's got a 15 and an 11-year-old boy and another older one at university. So any questions, do fire away. Please, absolutely do fire away. And what's the big dream for the future? What's the big vision for the future?
The education side of things is going extremely well. We are about to expand into the corporate world, actually. We've had a lot of requests from companies to come and work, particularly companies, male-dominated demographic, high-pressure, results-driven. So we've had quite a few inquiries about coming. So we're developing a corporate kind of business session at the moment to try and support men in the workplace with mental health issues, with allyship in the office. I'm really excited. We've got the first one coming up in a few weeks for that.
That's brilliant. How's this going to fit in the corporate world? Help me understand that.
In terms of what the aims of it?
Everything. Just give me a little more on that if you could.
Yeah. So the requests that we've had are from industries where they've got a lot of men working for them, taking a lot of time off, men maybe a fairly high suicide rate. So for one of the 5 big gas suppliers has got in touch with us and said that we want to do more on men's mental health. We want to promote this positive masculinity and redefine help seeking as a strength and, set up these networks. Will you help us? So we're working with them at the moment. They have a very male dominated workforce, a lot of issues with mental health within the workforce, a lot of days off, a lot of lads really struggling. So we're doing sessions with this kind of gas company around the country, just sitting down. We're basically doing what we do with the young men, but adapted for the unique set of pressures that come with being what you might see as, the breadwinner, the man of the house, all that kind of stuff, which as a younger man is definitely a set of pressures that I felt. I mean, you mentioned your mental health earlier. Twice in my life, I've really struggled with suicide ideation. And a lot of it came down to, I'm not doing enough as a man. I'm not good enough. I'm not meeting these expectations. And sitting down with them and talking openly about that was
really big. And that was really big for me. I luckily I wasn't suicidal, but I was in the place where I didn't want to die, but I didn't particularly want to live. I was in this big kind of flatline there, and it's better than suicidal ideation, I guess, but it's not. It's certainly not jumping for joy, and it's not somewhere I'd like to be. And the suicide statistics are awful, aren't they? And if it all comes down really to what could be taught in childhood with the core message that you're enough as you are, and you can be who and what you want to be. You've got your right to establish your own values, your own boundaries, your own consent, your own all of these things, and hopefully have that honoured by other people. I mean, if that ethos came into the workplace, I reckon burnout levels would drop as well, hugely.
Yeah, I do too. It's like you said there, like you are enough. Your value as a man is fixed. It's immutable. You don't have to fight for it every single day. You don't have to go out and earn it and scrap for it. It cannot be taken away from you. And that's what a lot of us, I don't think, and myself included, have struggled with, that I'm not good enough.
Because the minute you go out there and try and prove anything, you're kind of affirming to yourself that you don't have it. You're kind of affirming lack, if you like, rather than coming from a place of overflow that I'm already, or at least have the potential to be all I want to be. And just because an acorn's not an oak tree yet doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the acorn or the process of it becoming an oak tree. It's process, isn't it? Oh, we got a comment coming. Liz Saul says 10 is the age of responsibility, and so children should have a chat about consent at that point. I don't know if you just joined us, Liz, but we touched on this just a few minutes ago, actually. Same with, Mike was saying, talking to people, kids as young as 10 about consent, not sexual consent necessarily, but just general comfortable boundaries and consent. Well, I'm mindful of your time. Thank you ever so much for being on, Mike.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
I'm really glad you've come on. I must stop pinching Andrew Payne's guests, but you can hear you. If people want to get in touch with you, it's progressivemasculinity.co.uk. Plenty of blurb on the website, going into much greater detail of stuff that we've talked about, and you can hear Mike on the Men on Show podcast as well with Andrew Payne. Keep in touch and come on again, and if you make strides in other directions, please come on and tell us all about it, because we've got a very receptive audience to this kind of thing here. So really good to have you on, Mike. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, really good to meet you, buddy. Take care.
See you, man. Thank you. Bye.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Told you these Wednesdays were going to be good. There we go. What an absolute belter of a guest. Now, that's his website, progressivemasculinity.co.uk. And the podcast I was talking about, I'll pop it on the screen for you. And I'm doing all my own production here, so you'll have to bear with me. But this is one of my podcast clients. He's a fine man. And he's got some really interesting people he talks to. It all ties in with mental health. There we go. And you can find it wherever you get your podcast from. That shouldn't be an underscore there. Sorry, I'm just going to edit that. There we go. How did I do an underscore when I wanted one of those? That's what I wanted. There we go. I'll put that on the screen. Andrew Payne, Men on Show, an absolutely fantastic podcast. So, seems there's hope for us all. I think my key takeaway for today is, if we were taught this when we were young, just that core message of just by being, you're enough. For women as well. This isn't all about men, of course. 50% of the audience are women. Just by being human, you are enough as you are. And isn't it wonderful to be able to define yourself, define your own values, your own boundaries, your own beliefs, and then operate in the world as you choose to, rather than ridiculous expectations which clearly don't work. The burnout levels are high, suicide levels are high. Clearly what we're doing isn't working. I remember when I studied NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, one of the main tenets of that is simple. If what you're doing isn't working, try something else. Don't keep on doing the same thing and accepting the same result. But we seem to be certainly with some things, repeating the same patterns again and again and again and again. And I suppose we'll just keep repeating them until we don't anymore. But I think another key takeaway is that it doesn't have to be, change doesn't have to be difficult or painful. I remember doing change work with people when I was doing NLP, and this call that I go to, they do a lot of change work and personal growth work. And it's just, honestly, within 2 minutes, you can see years lift off people. A really good analogy is, it doesn't matter how long the virus has been in the computer, whether it's 20 seconds or 20 years, remove the virus and the hardware will work fine. Just a question of reprogramming the software just a little bit. And isn't it great to know that there's people out there like Mike and other people, many other people doing wonderful things in many, many fields. So we'll leave that with a positive spin today. Any final comments? We've got 2 new comments coming, which I was going to put on. Oh, here we go. Paul Claridge. Last week, I spent some time helping a very dear friend by escorting us to the funeral of another friend of hers. My friend has issues with her mental health, and she knows she can trust me unquestionably. You're one of the good guys, aren't you, Paul? As with regard to consent at the funeral, she needs to be hugged, and I asked her, do you need a hug? To which the answer was, yes, please. But of course, in reality, because of our friendship and understanding, there was no need for me to ask. Yeah, it depends on levels of relationship. Because I'm in showbiz, darling, I'm quite a huggy person. But some people don't, and some people aren't into that. That's fine. And if I'm not going to force hugs on people. But that's just me. And Graham, maybe there's too much pressure on men to be the breadwinner and progress in their career that tips them over the edge. I think very much so, Graham. Very, very much so indeed. And why would there be pressure if you're enough as you already are? Surely a career should be something enjoyable, something fun, something we look forward to doing, something that's an expression of who we are. Have a great time in America, by the way. Going to miss your comments. Really. No, have a lovely time. And I will see you in a couple of weeks. Hope you come back recharged and refreshed and revitalized. Russ will be here on Friday with Phil Dave. Excuse me, I got through the whole show without coughing. Russ will be here on Friday with Phil Dave and Chantal, the Screen Queen. There's an awful lot of good things on TV at the moment. So Chantal will take you through them. If you haven't seen the Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, I really do recommend that. I don't want to steal Chantal's thunder, but that's brilliant. People keep telling me about Saltburn as well, and there's a couple of really freaky scenes. And I found out what one of those said freaky scenes is now. And yeah, they're right. That's pretty freaky, but curiosity will probably get the better of me. So I'll probably watch that one. What else am I watching at the moment? I started watching King of Stonks last night on Netflix, which is kind of, if you like, closest I can get is kind of a German version of The Wolf of Wall Street, dubbed into USA English, but very, very good. Excuse me. I'm 8 hours back, so I will miss the shows. But Graham, they are always on catch up. And Paul, I know you're a bit late to the show today, but we're talking about progressive masculinity. It's definitely one of those worth watching on Catch Up. Been a really, really good conversation. Last thing for me to say is if there's any subjects you'd like to discuss, we can do deep dives into anything that would help you, any support you need. This is a non-judgmental, safe space. Let me know, and if I don't know about it, I'll find, as the advert says, a man or woman who does, and we can talk about it. But anything to do with men's or women's mental health and well-being, because it's an issue that affects us all, I'm absolutely down with that. But in the meantime, have a great Wednesday afternoon. Russ, I'll see you on Friday, and I'll be back on Monday. Take care. Good.